Morning, everyone. Welcome to this session on Introduction to Material Requirement Planning, MRP. My name is Ramaswamy. I'll be taking you through this session over the next 40 odd minutes. So let's start our session. The agenda for the session are: we'll be looking at the session objectives, then we look at the context, then we'll start off with an introduction to MRP, purpose of MRP, MRP structure, then inputs to MRP, MRP process, key terminology, then we'll follow up that with an example. After that, we'll look at a few implementation considerations. We'll also look at a few frequently asked questions, and then we'll close this session. So the session objectives. At the end of this session, the participants will learn MRP process, industries where MRP is applicable, the difference between dependent demand and independent demand, the inputs into MRP, the classification of companies based on MRP maturity, challenges in implementing MRP, some of the key terminologies used in MRP, and a simple example. We'll also look at implementation considerations if you're going to implement MRP as a consultant. Let's look at the context of MRP. MRP is a part of the supply chain planning activities in the organization. In the recent ERPs, these are also called as value chain planning, VCP. So the planning starts with demand management. So demand management consists of identifying the demand. In most of the organizations, the demand is identified through demand forecasting. We'll have various forecasting tools which will help you to identify the demand for the next 6 to 18 months. Based on the forecasted demands, the company will do what is known as an SNOP, Sales and Operations Planning. So in SNOP, the demand will be further broken down into weekly buckets. And these buckets, the sales demand will be broken at the level of the product, not at the level of the product variance. For example, if you're looking at a car company like Maruti, this is a company in India. So you will break up the demand into hatchbacks, sedans, SUVs, etc. And further, even if you look at hatchbacks, they may go down one level and look at Alto, WagonR, Desire, various hatchbacks. They will look at that level. What they will not go into at this aggregate sales and operations level planning is in further refinement. For example, if you look at Alto, they have different models like Alto LXI, Alto VXI, Alto K10. So many variants are there. They will not go into that level at the level of aggregate sales and operations planning. Now, based on the operations planning, you have two parts. One is the inventory control, which is mostly for non-MRP items, and the other aspect is material requirements planning, MRP. Now, one more aspect here is, let me move this a little bit to the top. One more aspect that you see here is operation scheduling. Once the planning engine runs and the planning outputs are generated, then the system moves into operation scheduling. So as you can see, the input to MRP will be at a high level SNOP, and the output will be or the following process. The preceding process will be SNOP, and the succeeding process will be operations scheduling. Preceding process is not exactly SNOP. This is at a high level. As we go deeper into MRP, we'll see a little bit more in-depth MRP in the succeeding slides. Let's move to the next one. Introduction to MRP. MRP stands for Material Requirements Planning. Initially, it stood for planning the requirements of material required to meet the customer demand. Over the years, it has also extended to include other areas of the organization. The term MRP2 has been used to denote manufacturing resources planning. In manufacturing resources planning, we'll be planning for capacity also. If you let me go back to the previous slide. If you see this slide, you can see that demand management, forecasting, aggregate sales and operations planning. Now, what is missing is the capacity planning part. When you are looking at operations planning, it further subdivides into two. One is material planning and one is the capacity planning. So the focus of this session is only on MRP. Hence, I am not covering the capacity planning part, but you have to keep in your mind that there is a capacity planning activity which is going to follow the operations planning activity. So it will run in parallel with the materials planning. So at the aggregate sales and operations level planning, you will have what is known as a rough cut capacity planning. And then at the level of material requirement planning, you will have what is known as a capacity requirements planning. So I'm not going to cover those in this session, but it's important for you to remember the overall context in which we are talking about. And now coming back to this slide, manufacturing resources planning also covers the capacity aspect of the planning. So they go in sync. Both capacity planning as well as material planning go in sync. The scope of this presentation, as we discussed at the beginning, is material requirements planning. What is MRP? It's a logical, easily understandable approach to determine the number of parts, components, and materials needed to produce each finished product that the firm sells. So the MRP objective is to plan for the finished product. That is the first aspect that you have to understand. And it helps determine the number of parts, components, and materials. So these three are specifically used here. Components are the necessary parts of your finished product. Like for example, if you are talking of car, the components could be an engine subassembly or a wheel and axis subassembly. Parts could be some of the spares which are optional items like wheel rims and all, we could call it as a part. And materials is essentially which normally we use it for items like lubricating oils and all that stuff. So MRP helps you to determine the number of parts, components, and materials needed to produce each unit of finished product. So it also provides the schedule specifying when these parts and components should be ordered or produced. So MRP not only looks at the quantity, it also provides you the schedule for availability of these materials. So MRP at this point in time, MRP you can see easily from this slide that MRP looks at what. The answers the question what. What is the part that has to be purchased? Then it answers the question how much, the quantity of each of the part that has to be purchased. And then it also answers the question when these parts need to be made available. So what, how much, and when. These three questions are answered by MRP. Going on to the next slide, introduction to MRP. MRP handles dependent demand. Now, there are two types of demands. One is independent demand and one is a dependent demand, also known as a derived demand. Independent demand is the demand that is not in the control of the company. For example, customer demand for your finished products is not in control of your company. You can only do forecasting. So that is an independent demand. Forecasting tools are used to approximate independent demand. Dependent demand is caused by the demand for a higher level item. So this is calculated based on the BOM exposure. BOM stands for bill of material. We'll be looking at it a little later in detail. For example, demand for number of cars is an independent demand. However, since each car requires 4 tires, the demand for tires is a dependent demand. Moving on. Purpose of MRP. The main purpose of MRP system are to control inventory levels. So obviously, MRP determines what, when, how much. So it intuitively controls your inventory level based on the rules that assign, of course. Assign operating priorities for the items. Essentially, we are saying that it helps you to schedule when you should release the orders, both purchase orders and work orders, so that the materials are available in time. So this is what is called operating priority for the item. And plan capacity to load the production system. So this is essentially MRP doesn't plan capacity, of course, but MRP will the dependent demand, which is the independent demand which is used, will produce production orders, which will help you to plan your capacity to ensure that the demands, the orders released by MRP system are able to be serviced. So that is where the capacity part of this discussion comes in. The theme of the MRP is getting the right material. That's what we discussed earlier. Right material, that is a what part, to the right place at the right time. And what it's missing here is in the right quantity. Getting the right material. So what, right time is when, right quantity is how much, and right place is where. So what, where, when, and how much. These are the 4 questions that MRP answers here. MRP helps to improve customer service, definitely. Minimize inventory investment because it optimizes inventory levels, and maximize production efficiency. When the material and capacity is available, you can schedule your production without any interruptions. Moving on to slide number 7, where can we use MRP? MRP is most valuable in industries where a number of products are made in batches using the same productive equipment. So essentially what we are talking about here is repetitive manufacturing. MRP is very useful in repetitive manufacturing, like car manufacturing, where you can run one batch of Auto LXI, say let's say of 1,000 cars, and then you can actually change the setups to go for another variant of the car. So in this kind of environment, MRP is very useful. It's most useful in assembly type industries where standard parts are assembled to produce a product, and least useful in fabrication type industries. Fabrication type industries are essentially configured to order kind of industries where for each of the finished product, the configuration could undergo change based on the customer requirement. So in such environment, MRP cannot be much of a use. MRP does not work well in companies that produce a low number of units annually. Naturally, MRP is very good at batch production, but if you are producing very few number of items in a year, MRP, you could as well do manual planning. It also does not work for high-tech industries with complex design and unpredictable lead times. So these are some of the exclusion. So you may ask, what about the process industries? In process industries, you could use MRP. For some items, you may not be able to use MRP, but for some items, you may be able to use MRP. Hence, you could say MRP utilization could be medium in a process industry. Moving on to slide 8. So here we are talking about the MRP structure. So MRP structure, like we discussed earlier in the context diagram, we saw that there is an aggregate plan from the SNOP. There is an aggregate sales plan and aggregate operations plan, which is nothing but the aggregate product plan that you can see here. And based on that aggregate product plan, you generate what is known as a master production schedule. Master production schedule is where the planning goes into a detailed level. Earlier we discussed that in the aggregate plan, we don't plan for different variants of, let's say, a hatchback car like Alto. Here, what we are going to do in MPS, we plan for each variant. Alto LXI how much, Alto VXI how much, K10 how much. Different variants we are going to plan at a very detailed level. That is what is known as a master production schedule. There are two more inputs to the master production schedule other than the aggregate product plan, the forecast demand. One is firm customer orders. So if you have firm customer orders, you input into the MPS. You may modify your forecast because in your forecast you would have considered part of that firm customer orders. So if you're going to incorporate firm customer orders, you will review the forecast demand to ensure that you are not overproducing. And also forecast demand from random customers. Between the time you created the forecast demand and between the time you are running the MRP, you may have added additional customers to your company who may have, who may either have firm orders, in which case it will go to the firm customer order part, or you may also want to forecast some demand for them. So forecast demand for random customers, that also is an input to the MPS. So three inputs: aggregate product plan, that is a forecast demand, firm customer orders, and forecast demand from random customers. All the three inputs goes into the master production schedule. So, and this master production schedule is one of the three inputs to the MRP program, as you can see here. You can see here the master production schedule is an input to MRP program. The other two inputs to MRP program is one is bill of materials file. That's why we discussed earlier BOM. When I said it was bill of material. Bill of material is the sequence in which your finished product is going to be produced. What are the material and what are the quantities which are required to produce one unit of the finished product? That is called bill of material. Now, bill of material in every company is continuously being reviewed based on the market inputs. So the engineering design team might be reviewing your bill of material. So the firm bill of material, which is the final bill of material, should be the input to the MRP program. We will see further that that this is one of the criteria. Before running the MRP, we have to ensure that the bill of material file is frozen. The other input to MRP, which you can see on your right hand side, is the inventory records file. So in inventory records file has two aspects. One is the inventory attributes and one is the inventory transactions. So again, we'll see that inventory transactions have to be clearly updated because MRP will look at the on-hand quantity available to plan for whatever is the additional requirements. So ensure that the on-hand quantity is reviewed and accurate before you do an MRP run. What are the outputs of MRP program? One is there are two outputs which are planned purchase order, purchase requisitions, and planned production orders. So these two are, so this purchase requisition is for the buy item, production order is for the make item. And the another output will be the exception report. Exception report will throw you MRP exceptions where some configuration is missing or some integrity issues are there in the data. So those things could come up in your exception reports. So these are the this is your total overall MRP structure. 3 inputs to the MRP and 2 operational outputs. One is planned purchase requisition and planned production order, and then a couple of reports. Reports, obviously, you can design your own reports as well. So this is the structure of MRP. Just take a moment to just look at this diagram very closely because going forward, I'm going to focus on this diagram quite a lot. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Number 9, inputs to MRP. These were 3 inputs to MRP: master production schedule, bill of material file, and inventory records file. Now let's look at each of them briefly. Master production schedule shows the demand for the finished product at a detailed level. Like I discussed earlier, the demand for the product is forecasted at a variant level. Product demand will come from three sources. One is forecast demand, one is firm orders not included in the forecast, and forecast demand from the random customers. The first component, forecast demand, will be a part of the aggregate S&OP. We discussed all these things, so I'm going to move forward a little bit quickly. Demand for spares is fed directly into MRP. They are not a part of MPS. Demand of spares is fed directly into MRP. So there will be demand for sub-assembly items from your service centers. So they are not forecasted by the marketing team as a part of your aggregate aggregate forecast and aggregate demand. So any sub-assembly demand for the service centers and for replacement demand have to be factored in manually and input into MRP. The next input to MRP is the bill of material, BOM. Bill of material file contains the complete product descriptions, including materials, parts, and components that go into the product, that is the what part, and sequence in which the product is created. We discussed this earlier. It's also called a product structure or a product tree. So how product is put together, it shows in a diagrammatic way the flow of various inputs as they gradually join together to form the finished product, item information, and the quantity used per unit of the finished product. So this is a bill of material. There are various types of bill of material. One is the indented bill of material. It's also in the form of your product tree, where each level, bill of material will have multiple levels. Each level is indented. So this is easy on the eye. However, it's not good for MRP program to plan properly. MRP program will prefer what is known as a single level BOM. So you don't have multiple indentations in the single level BOM, but the information remains the same. Then you also have what is known as a modular BOM, where you have various sub-assemblies which are getting built and which roll up to form the finished product. So you will have child inputs going to produce sub-assembly 1, multiple sub-assemblies going to produce sub-assembly 2, and multiple sub-assembly 2s and some child items all joining together to form the finished product. Then you have other BOMs which are used for planning. One is super BOM, modular BOM, and super BOM simplify the planning process and hence known as the planning bill of materials. So this is about the bill of materials part. Essentially, for operational purposes, the critical aspect is this, which is the single level BOM. This is what is being used to produce your, which is used with MRP engine to calculate the quantity and required and when it is required. Okay, moving on. Bill of material. This is an example of a bill of material. So you can see there are multiple levels here: level 0, level 1, level 2. Level 0 is the finished product, which is your independent demand. So here I have put the level 0 for a car. And in a simple level 1, I have a wheel assembly, I have an engine assembly, and I have a dashboard assembly. So you can see, obviously this is the modular bill of material. So you have a BOM here, wheel assembly, and then you have a BOM here, assembly called engine assembly, and then dashboard assembly. And now next level, the wheel assembly consists of, each wheel assembly consists of, so you can see wheel assembly, 2 wheel assemblies are required for 1 unit of a car. Here 1 engine assembly is required for 1 unit of a car. 1 dashboard assembly is required for 1 unit of a car. Now coming to wheel assembly, 1 wheel assembly will require 2 wheels and 1 axle. So why 2 wheel assemblies? One is for the front wheel assembly and one is for the rear wheel assembly. So each wheel assembly will have 2 wheels and 1 axle. Each engine assembly will have 1 cylinder and 1 piston. Each dashboard assembly will have 1 dashboard and 1 odometer. And then you also have direct child items known as the steering, which are not a part of the assembly. They go directly into your car. like headlights or steering wheel, they go directly into your car. So there are no assemblies here. So this is how bill of material is structured. You can see that even though these steering and headlights and all go directly to the car, I have put it at level 2. So this is actually done purposely because MRP engine find it easier to utilize this feature known as low level coding, where items of the same level items of the same nature are put at the same level. Uh, uh, I don't have time to go detail into this low level coding, but you please remember that this is a feature which MRP engine uses, where the same items are planned at the same level. That's essentially what is the low level coding. So this is simple BOM of a car. The number given in the brackets is the number of items required to produce 1 unit of the car. This is what is known as a 2-level BOM. So level 0 is not considered. So this is a 2-level BOM. This contains 3 sub-assemblies: wheel assembly, engine and dashboard, and 2 items: steering and headlights. Low-level coding, all the items in the same level. For example, steering and headlights are arranged at level 2, even though they don't have assemblies in this example. This helps planning. Remember, low-level coding is not this simple. Low-level coding is a little bit more complex. I'm not going into the complexity of low-level coding in this session. Inputs to MRP. The next input to MRP is the inventory attributes. I told you input in MRP is inventory file, inventory file, bill of material, and NPS. Inventory file consists of 2 aspects. One is the inventory attributes and one is the inventory availability. We discussed this earlier. Inventory attributes helps in the planning. These are attributes which are specific to each item. Some of the example attributes are purchase lead time for purchased items, production lead time for produced item, status active or inactive, substitute items if it's available, planning method, MRP, non-MRP, unit cost. A whole lot of additional attributes are there. These are only a few items that came into my mind for MRP to work correctly. Unit cost is given here as an input because MRP also runs, and when it runs, it also calculates the total cost, so that you can review and you can ensure that this is within your budget. So that's why unit cost has been kept here. For example, if you are raising a purchase requisition, the cost information is required for the approver. So that's why this input item is important for MRP. Going to the next input is inventory on hand. Inventory on hand or inventory availability consists of 4 aspects. One is the inventory on hand, which is obviously the on hand available inventory. Expected receipts, also known as scheduled receipts. These are materials expected to be received from orders already released in the previous planning periods. We already have released few purchase orders or production orders in the previous run of MRP. So they may be bringing you material in your current planning period. So that quantity will be included in your expected receipts. You may have planned order releases. Planned order before that, planned order receipts. The planned order receipts is the material expected to be received in the current planning period due to the release created by this MRP run. So we will see further in an example when you see that. Essentially, what we are talking about is that this MRP, the planned order receipt, is what is the amount required in this period, which is not either on hand or on expected receipt. So the balance will be, so demand minus on hand minus expected receipt at a high level will be the planned order receipt, which should be created by this MRP run. Planned order releases are the orders scheduled to be released in this planning period by the MRP run. So the sequence is first planned order receipt and then planned order releases. Planned order releases are the purchase orders and the production orders which are going to be created by this MRP run to meet the planned order receipts. So this summarizes the 4 inputs to MRP. Now we go into the MRP process. MRP process starts with looking at the level 0 item. The requirements for level 0 items are received from the master schedule. These requirements are referred to as gross requirements. Typically, these are scheduled in weekly time buckets. System uses current on-hand balance and the scheduled receipts to calculate the net requirements. The system also will look at safety stock. I will see in our example how safety stock is considered. But system uses a current on hand and the scheduled receipt to calculate the net requirement. The summary is that net requirements are calculated. Using net requirement, the system calculates when orders should be scheduled to meet these requirements. This is known as planned order receipt. Example will make it more clearer. So net requirements, based on the net requirements, planned order receipt is generated. Now, based on the planned order receipt, system looks at the lead time information to calculate when the orders should be released to meet the planned order receipt. This schedule is called planned order release. So planned order receipt comes, and after that, new system plans for release of orders, and that's called planned order release. It is called planned order release because somebody will have to review and approve before it becomes an order. So it just releases the order, releases a planned order, will become a firm order once it is approved. After completing the 4 steps for level 0 items, system moves to the level 1 items. The process repeats till all the levels are considered and planned for. Note that for items level 1 to level n, there will be independent demand that the system will factor in. We discussed this earlier that for the items from level 1 to level n, there will be replacement demand from the service centers, which also have to be factored in, and that is not factored in your master production schedule or the customer orders or the random customer forecast. So that also have to be added as an input to for the MRP process to work correctly. Challenges in MRP. We are in slide number 15. One is obviously the GIGO effect. Since MRP is a computer program, quality of output is dependent on the quality of input. So the more accurate the demand forecast, the more updated your inventory quantity data, the more accurate the item attributes, the better will be the output of MRP. One challenge is organization design. You have to design your organization keeping MRP in mind when you are looking at your implementation. If you have MRP, your organization design might change because there has been situation where MRP will look at the on-hand quantity in your organization. So, for example, you have 2 factories, and one factory require the material and it's available in another factory. MRP will not create a purchase order because the material is already available in the other factory. However, physical distance may be too much that you won't be able to ship those material from one factory to the another. So to ensure that such kind of situation do not happen, you may have to design your factories appropriately based on your ERP application that you are looking. The point here is that this is an implementation consideration. If MRP is there, you may have to consider MRP also during the organization design. The behavioral impact is another point. MRP will take time to stabilize. It may lead to material shortage in some cases. It's very important not to panic. Obviously, it's easy to say. If there's a loss of sale, there will be panic. But in case of panic, don't go and make significant adjustments. Make delicate interventions, review what went wrong, and make changes accordingly. So it will take some time for MRP to stabilize. Regular review of material data. The input data might undergo subtle shift over the time. So subtle shifts over the time. For example, company may find a new vendor who could supply parts quickly. This will need the organization to update the purchase lead time of the item with the new lead time. So originally you had a lead time of 20 days and you identify a vendor who is going to supply it at 10 days. So you will have to apply the preferred supplier and also the new lead time of 10 days. So if you don't make these changes, you will have purchase orders released by the system 20 days in advance. Then it will confuse everybody, including your vendor. Another aspect that you have to consider is the cycle count accuracy. It's important to schedule cycle count before MRP program is run. In organizations, these two processes are done by different silos, and due to that, they may not talk to each other. If your cycle count is not done before MRP, the on-hand balances may be wrong. Physically, the items may not be available. So your planning, even the most perfect planning, you will not be able to use that. So to that extent, ensure that cycle count is done, the necessary inventory adjustments are done so that the on-hand quantities are updated accurately before you run your MRP systems. Going to the slide number 16, company classification. Now, based on the maturity, MRP maturity, companies can be grouped into 4 classes. One is basic usage of MRP. So there may not be any MRP at all. They may be doing Excel or they may be doing some basic planning and they will be surviving. These are class D companies. Class C companies, low usage of MRP features. MRP is used to plan for a few critical items. So inventory attributes may not be updated accurately, cycle count may not be there. So, but an MRP, basic MRP process would be there in the system, and which will be used to plan for a few critical items, and then the plan may be reviewed thoroughly and reviewed with the actual data before they finalize the order, firming up the various orders. Class B, moderate usage of MRP features used for more critical items, more number of critical items, than Class C companies. Detailed item specs may not be available. Class A are completely dependent on MRP planning. MRP is run with complete specifications. So this categorization is important as a consultant. When you go to a customer, you should become sensitive to which class the company is in. So, for example, if you see users are not very much well versed in computer usage, and if there are a lot of users who are just doing a lot of mechanical activities, then you may not need to spend a lot of time on planning and configuring for MRP. They may not be ready for MRP. So that's the purpose of this slide, to sensitize you that as a consultant, when you go, you before you make any commitments, you size up the customer, and based on the class of the customer, you will design your solution. Going forward, the key, now we come to the key terminologies in MRP. One is independent demand. We saw this already. This is the demand for L0 items, typically derived from forecast and firm orders. Then you have dependent demand. So these are the demand for L1 to Ln items in bill of material. This is calculated by the system using information contained in the bill of material and inventory records. Bill of materials BOM, the record that gives the information about the material, parts and components required to produce the sellable finished product. BOM can be represented in 2 ways, indented BOM and single level BOM. BOM explosion. This is a process used by the system to calculate the gross requirements of items at various levels in the BOM based on the demand for L0 items. Like we saw that if the demand for car is 100, and for each car you need wheel assembly, 2 wheel assemblies. That means you will require 200 wheel assemblies. Each wheel assembly will have 2 wheels. That means for 100 car you will require 400 wheels. This calculation, So from the top level, going down at each level and exploding and identifying the number of items required. This process is known as BOM explosion. Lot sizing, the rule used by the MRP program to determine the quantity for planned order releases. There are 4 lot sizing rules. They are lot for lot, economic order quantity, least total cost, and least unit cost. So I'm not going to the detail of this lot sizing. So there is, in the example, I have covered this lot sizing rule. So we will see when we see the example. SNOP stands for Sales and Operations Planning, high-level plans made for the next 6 to 18 months. Time fences, we discussed this earlier. Planning periods in the MRP having some opportunity to make changes. When the time fence is frozen, no change is possible. In moderately firm time fence, allow some change so long as the on-hand quantity is available. Flexible may mean almost all changes except for those with long lead times. Next is available to promise. Number of L0 items that can be promised to the customer. So this is the available product. This is about the finished product that you can promise to the customer. Assume that 100 cars are planned to be produced in week 10. There are firm customer orders for 60 cars. This means that there are 40 cars which are available to promise to the new customer. Then you have what is known as the pegging. As we saw in the bill of material, it goes from level 0 all the way down, level 1, level 2, level 3. Pegging is essentially the way of MRP system to link the child items with their corresponding parents item. So it's a reverse flow of bill of material, you could say. This pegging provides an upward linkage between the low-level items and their parents. Then you have MRP items, those items that plan through MRP. Non-MRP items, which are for those whose quantity is planned outside of MRP. For example, the items with min-max planning or reorder quantity planning method do not go through MRP. So these are planned outside the MRP. Lead time, the time between the release of order and the receipt of the item. The main 2 lead times are purchase lead time and the production lead time. MRP program uses this information to schedule the planned order releases. Okay, so this completes the conceptual understanding of MRP. A quick recap. We started by seeing the context in which MRP operates. We saw that there's a demand management, then there's an SNOP, then there's an aggregate operations plan, and then material requirement planning, which consists of material planning, which consists of inventory control as well as MRP. We also, and succeeding process is going to be the scheduling. We also discussed that the hidden or unseen part of this planning process is the capacity part, which I'm not covering in this session. But that as a part of the context, it's important to remember that capacity planning is a part of the overall planning process. We looked at the difference between dependent and independent demand. We learned that MRP is used to plan for items with dependent demand, which are nothing but your L1 to Ln items. The 3 inputs to MRP, MPS, bill of material, and inventory file. We learned that the bill of material could have multiple levels. Inventory file has 2 aspects. One is the inventory attribute and the other is the inventory quantities. We saw that the output of MRP is planned order releases. These are purchase requisitions for buy items and production orders for make items. We also reviewed some challenges in running MRP, including GIGO, need for regular review of input data, ensuring that BOM changes are incorporated and cycle count is completed before running the MRP. So this covers the conceptual part of MRP. Let's look at a quick example. So earlier we had created a BOM structure of a car. We will use that structure in this example. Assume that in week 10, forecast demand for a specific model of car is 100. So now we will see how the BOM explosion happened and how each of the lower level items are planned for. Here, for example, to produce 100 car in week 10, they require 100 steering wheel and 200 wheel assemblies in week 9, right? So we are going to just show the example for steering wheels and wheel assembly. Steering is a buy item, that is that it's a purchased item. Wheel assembly is a make item. Now wheel assembly has two components, wheels and axles. Both are buy items. Buy item means system will create purchase requisition. Make item means system will create a production order. That's the difference. Okay, so now let us look at the steering wheel. So you can see here, this is car. Gross requirement on week 10 is 100, we discussed. On hand is 0, safety stock is 0, and order quantity is lot for lot. So on hand is 0, expected receipts is 0, projected on hand available is 0 in this example. So the net requirement will be 100. We discussed this formula earlier. The gross requirement minus expected receipt minus projected on hand available is the net requirements. And so since 100 is a net requirement, the planned order receipt in week 10 is 100. So they will need 100 cars in week 10 to meet the forecast demand. So the planned order receipt is 100. Now the lead time for the car is 2 weeks to produce a car. So a production order for car should be released in week 8 for 100 quantities. So the system will create a planned order release for 100 car in week 8 to receive 100 cars as a planned order receipt in week 10 to meet the net requirements of 100. So this is what this part implies. Now coming to the steering wheel. So you need 100 cars. You need 100 cars to start in week 8. So that means in week 8, 100 steering wheels should be available. That's a gross requirement. On hand is 10. Safety stock is 0. Here the order quantity. You remember we discussed this lot sizing, and we are saying this order. It's not lot for lot. Lot for lot means for 100 car, you need 100 car here. You will place a planned order release of 100. But here economic order quantity is 150. So when you are buying buying steering wheel, here the economic order quantity is 150. So your order quantity will be 150. However, my gross requirement is only 100, and I have already on hand available of 10. So I will require only 90. Net requirements for steering wheel is only 90 to meet this demand. But I will have a planned order receipt of 150 because my order quantity is 150. And my lead time for steering wheel is 1 week. So I will place this order for 150 steering wheel in week 7 to receive 150 steering wheel in week 8 to service the production of this car starting from week 8 so that the car can be released for sales in week 10. So my net requirement is 90, my planned order receipt is 150. So my on hand going forward, my on hand for this item will be 60. So this on hand will be used for planning for the future weeks. So this is about the steering wheel, which was the level 2 item. There was no sub-assemblies in between. Now let's look at how to plan, how the system will plan for wheel sub-assembly. So here again, at the top level, you have the car. You need 100 cars in week 8. So that means that in week 8, I will require 200 wheel sub-assembly because one car will need 2 wheel sub-assemblies, if you remember, wheel assemblies. 200 wheel assemblies will be required. There is no scheduled receipt. However, on hand is 60 here. So that means I have an on hand of 60. So on hand of 60 means I will require, and I also have a safety stock of 50 here. So I have an on hand of 60 and I will require a safety stock of 50. So that means I will require to produce 200 plus 50. 250 I need to produce minus 60 on hand, which will be 190. So the planned order receipt in week 8 for this item will be 190. So 190 planned order receipt plus 60, 250 will help me to produce 200 wheel assemblies plus have 50 wheel assemblies as safety stock. Now the wheel assembly lead time is 1 week. So my planned order release system will create a production order to produce this wheel assembly, 190 units of wheel assembly in not 120, 190. Yeah, I'm sorry, 190 units of wheel assembly in week 7, so that it can meet the planned order receipt of wheel assembly of 190 in week 8. The lead time for wheel assembly is 1 week. Now we come to the wheel. Now I will require 190 wheel assembly in week 7. So each wheel assembly has 2 wheels. So that means in week 7 I will need 380 wheels. That's my gross requirement. 380 wheels. Plus on hand available is 30. On hand available is 30. And safety stock is 50. So safety stock is 50, on hand available is 30. So that means that I will need 380 plus 50, that is 430 items to be produced, minus on hand of 30, which means that my planned order, my net requirements is 400 in week 7 for wheels. That in week 7, my planned order receipt should be 400. I need to receive 400 wheels in week 7 to service this, to start the working on this 190 wheel assembly to meet this requirement for wheel assembly in week 8, so that I can produce 100 cars and start producing 100 cars in week 8 and produce and sell 100 cars in week 10 to meet the demand of 100 cars in week 10. So you can easily see how it is flowing down from this independent demand item all the way down to different levels. So here from the level 0, wheel assembly, it has come to the level 1. This has come to the level 2. Wheel is a level 2. So is the axle. Every wheel assembly will have one axle. So 190 wheel assembly means I need 190 axles in week 7. I already have an on hand of 60, and I have a safety stock requirement of 50. So that means 190 plus 50, 240 minus 60, 180 is my net requirement. So 180 has to be received, planned order receipt in week 7. The lead time for axle is 3 weeks. The guy who forges his axle will take 3 weeks to service your requirement. So that means that you have to release your buy order. This is a purchased item, so you have to release your buy order to your forging company in week 4, so that you can meet the demand for wheel assembly in week 7, which will meet the demand for cars in week 8, which will help to produce your 100 cars in week 10 and service your customer demand. So you can see in this example, almost all the concepts that we have discussed I have covered here. I have covered the bomb explosion. I have covered the lead time concepts. I have covered in the previous slide, I have covered the order quantity, lot sizing concepts. All the concepts have been covered in our simple example. Remember, this is a simple example where actual MRP process is much more complex than this. But conceptually, you need to understand this is how the MRP works, so that you will be able to appreciate the complexity. Okay, now going forward to the next slide. What some of the implementation considerations? One is, if you're as a customer, as a consultant, when you go, first assess the company class. MRP will work well for A and B class of companies. Based on that, you set the expectations accordingly. Ensure that input data is reviewed and updated regularly. Inventory attributes, all BOM changes are incorporated. Cycle count is completed. Review the MRP output and make delicate interventions. It's very important for you as a consultant to be cool, because there will be a lot of panic in the organization, because suddenly your MRP system will give you a lot of purchase orders and production orders, and nobody will have a clue how it happened. So as a consultant, it's very important to understand how it works, and then keep your cool, and then ensure delicate interventions. Next thing is, do not panic. Do not doubt the MRP system. Remember that MRP system will work fine as long as your data is correct. If your output is wrong, invariably your data is wrong. So figure out where it went wrong. Iterate, review, finalize. So MRP output never comes right the first time. So you have to continuously review, make changes to your input MRP, run the MRP engine again till a satisfactory MRP run gets generated on a consistent basis. So these are a few other implementation considerations. Moving on, there are few questions which came up during the session. One question was, we are implementing MRP, system is creating purchase requisition 1 month in advance. However, the actual lead time is 10 days. This is causing havoc with the planning process. So the answer is in the question itself. Check the purchase lead time of the buy item. If it is 30, make it 10 and try again. Next one, we are implementing MRP. System is inflating the inventory. This has caused panic in the organization. We thought that MRP will help us reduce our inventory. Okay, the answer is this is a temporary phenomenon and will sort itself out over a period of time. The reason this is happening is that MRP only gives you recommendation to buy or produce. It doesn't give recommendation to handle excess inventory. So for example, if there are two items, item A and item B, and item A has excess inventory, MRP will suggest a buy of item B. As the quantity of item B is received in the inventory, total inventory quantity temporarily increases. However, as the MRP run progresses over the next few weeks, the excess quantity of A will be consumed, and your inventory optimization will automatically come into effect. How do we handle spare part demand from the service centers? Okay, we discussed this. MPS, the key input to MRP, only considers the demand for independent items. It does not consider the replacement demand for sub-assemblies and spare parts. This information has to be separately provided to MRP program before the MRP run. The philosophy is, if you can plan, then plan, else use safety stock. So to handle such kind of exigencies, you could also use safety stock. However, safety stock should not become the end all for all your inefficiency. Try to plan as much as possible and then handle uncertainties using safety stock. Going forward, other question, what should be the ideal frequency of running MRP program? So ideally the MRP should, there is no ideal frequency first of all. It depends on each company. MRP should be run for the firm time frames. We discussed the time frames earlier in your key terminology. The firm time frames is where you are not going to make any changes to your plan. So, say for example, if let's say that if your firm time frames is 2 weeks, for the next 2 weeks demand, you are not going to make any changes, so that your MRP run will get some sort of stability. So naturally it follows that based on the time frames you will schedule your MRP program. If the time frames is a week, MRP should be run weekly. If it's a fortnight, MRP should be run every fortnight. MRP should not be run on a daily basis. That's not advisable. The reason I put this is there was a question asked whether I can run MRP on a daily basis. Of course you can do, but it doesn't. It only creates more and more confusion. Okay, we come to the end of the session now. We have covered almost everything. So let's just review. Did we meet the objectives? Did we learn MRP process? Yes, we did. We looked at the MRP process. Industries where MRP is applicable. We said that class B and class A are good candidates for implementing MRP. Difference between dependent demand and independent demand. Yes, we did it. Inputs into MRP. Yes. Classification of companies based on MRP. Classification of companies based on MRP maturity. We discussed class A, B, C, D. Going back, industries where MRP is applicable, we discussed that MRP is applicable for repetitive manufacturing industries. They are less applicable for configure to order, customized to order kind of industries, or medium applicable for process industries. We looked at a few challenges in implementing the MRP system. We discussed some of the key terminologies used in MRP, and we also looked at how the MRP works with a simple worked out example. So we covered the entire gamut of MRP. So here is a special offer. It's going to end quite soon. I'm just showing it that I delivered this offer. So by the time you see this video, this offer might be already over. I'm not going to read through this offer now. Moving forward, there's a link for feedback. In case you find this good, you have a session. You have a feedback form called MRP session feedback form. You can review that, and you can give me your feedback based on this session, so that I'll be able to make the necessary changes, so that I can improve my delivery quality to serve you better. So this feedback form, this feedback form will be open for a long time. Anybody who sees this presentation and come this far, kindly spend a little bit time to give me a feedback. It will help me to improve my presentation. Okay, there's a couple of slides about me. My name is Ramaswamy. Of course, I told you at the beginning. I have been implementing ERP for the last 20 years. I'm very passionate about ERP. I have a book on ERP titled Selected Articles on ERP, which is available in Amazon in both Kindle and paperback editions. Paperback is available in only a few selected countries. I regularly blog about ERP at my blog, erpconsultancy.blogspot.in. I regularly contribute to discussions on ERP in LinkedIn. I read a lot on ERP. I used to publish, it has got a little bit slow. I publish many blog posts in my blog on ERP. So you could look at my ERP. It's a good source for inputs for consultants. I started implementing ERP in 2001. I worked in different roles. All these roles I worked in. I experienced in all areas of ERP lifecycle, including pre-sales, vendor evaluation, setting up help desk, implementation, upgrade, the works. I've implemented multiple applications, including Scala, Microsoft Dynamics, PeopleSoft, Oracle EBS, and Oracle Cloud. Implemented in different industries like chemicals, jewelry, food processing, financial services, paper, discrete manufacturing, and process manufacturing. And geographically, I worked in different countries, including US, UK, LATAM, that is Colombia and Mexico. I consider Mexico under Latin America, China and Middle East. These are my professional qualifications and experience. I'm a mechanical engineer. I worked in steel industry for about 10 years. I took a sabbatical to do an MBA program between 95 and 97. Then from 99 and 2000, I worked in academia and have been working on ERP from 1999. So it's almost 21 years now. I also did a postgraduate program from Indian Institute of Management, one of the leading management institutes in India, from 2003 to 2006. So here are my contacts. You can always get in touch with me in any of these contacts. I prefer that you contact me on the email, in my phone, or in LinkedIn. I don't follow Skype regularly, and I also don't follow Twitter regularly. So you can use my LinkedIn to contact with me. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks a lot for listening to this session. Your feedback is very, very valuable to me. If you're listening to this on YouTube, kindly give me your comments under YouTube. Kindly fill your feedback form so that I can have a record of the feedback. And I also will have these running offers on my book, which I can share with you, where if you're interested, you can avail of that offer. Thank you so much. Thanks once again.